Welcome back to DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast on the back of an absolutely thrilling Gallagher Grand Prix won by Scott Dixon, who finally broke his win drought from Nashville last year and carries on his win streak going back from 2004. We didn't have it easy today. Graham Rahal, what a weekend from Graham Rahal. Got eliminated from the Indy 500 this very track in May, and he's turned it around. Very close weekend, not quite to be for Graham Rahal, but Scott Dixon spun on lap 1, but that didn't defeat him today.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpick, and it's hard to really tell, what's the most impressive. I think obviously we should start with the winner, Scott Dixon. It was a chaotic start to the race. He got spun round. It was just a bit of a check-up. He appeared to get into the back of Alex Palou, his teammate, who then hit his other teammate, Marcus Armstrong. I think that was more a check-up. I think I would pin the blame more on Palou for that, as much as it probably was a racing incident. But going 4 wide in a couple of instances on that first lap, it was slightly crazy. But yeah, Dixon got caught up in that incident. I think kind of got slightly into the back of Palou, and then Grosjean went into the back of Dixon. So he immediately went to the back of the field of those who were still running. He decided to come in during the caution, and then they really made it work. You could say it was a strategic masterclass. I think it was a really strong strategy. However, other drivers came in that caution and didn't make it work, but Dixon made it work, and in a pretty emphatic fashion as well. I mean, tyre management, fuel management, it was a classic Scott Dixon race, really. And, this was the day that he broke the record for, I think, the most consecutive starts. He's made it 19 consecutive seasons, I think, with wins as well. It was just a great drive from the great man, and it once again proved why he is arguably the greatest driver to have competed in this series.
At the beginning as well, after the spin that happened, I think people kind of didn't really think that he was going to win, or he didn't think that it was kind of against the odds that he could get a good race after that, because it is kind of very hard. And I think to be able to do that, it just speaks to the skill that he has.
Yeah, you kind of saw him at the front of the field. You thought nothing of it. You thought, oh well, he's gonna have to come in. He's gonna have to stop again, and Rahal will cycle back to the lead. But Dixon just made it work. Yes, he maybe didn't have the same pace because he was saving fuel, but he made it work. And then it came to the final stop, and he comes out 7 seconds ahead of Rahal. I mean, it came down to the wire in the end, but Dixon knows what he's doing. It's not a coincidence that it's close on the final lap, but that Rahal can't get the job done. Dixon, he knows how to do this stuff. He knows how to manage, and yeah, it was a fantastic drive, and probably the drive of the season so far. Definitely one of them.
Lap 1 was almost a blessing in disguise for Dixon, because he obviously took a strategy which he wouldn't have normally took, and right from the start, we were thinking, it's going to be a very caution-dependent strategy. He's going to need to get lucky with yellow, and the yellow never came out the entire race. But he's still got the victory in, which is really, really impressive. And his kind of fuel and tyre management skills are out of this world, and he executed the different strategy absolutely perfectly. And I was a bit of a blessing in disguise, but there was not many other people than Scott Dixon who could have executed that strategy to that effect.
Yeah, precisely that. And I mean, this elevates him up to second in the standings now, for what it's worth. 101 points behind Alex Palou. We'll get onto that, but it's kind of, he could win the championship next time out at Gateway, which, speaks to the season he's had. But, Dixon, second in the championship, having taken 3 fewer wins than Josef Newgarden, who is now behind him in third. I think that just emphasises the consistency that Dixon has had once again this season, and any other season where you didn't have his teammate Alex Palou with just another level of consistency. We'd be talking about Dixon fighting for yet another championship, I feel. It's been a good season, and I think he would have felt hard done by, maybe disappointed if he didn't come away from it with a win.
Yeah, and the win's certainly been a long time coming for Scott Dixon, and it is a very deserved victory. He's been super consistent all year, and it's finally the result that he should get. And I was taunting him out as one of the people who's still yet to win a race this year, and finally managed to do it. So props to Scott Dixon. Really impressive performance. But I think maybe the star of the weekend was Graham Rahal. His month of May was talked about extensively. They ran well here in May, did Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, but it was another level this weekend of seeing Graham getting first pole in 6 years and coming agonisingly close to victory. He drove pretty much a perfect race, just was out-strategized by Dixon in the end.
Yeah, I think speaking more generally than just Graham Rahal, for the entire team, it will have been really sweet to come back to, to come back to Indy, and obviously not on the oval, but just to come back to where they struggled so much as a team in May, having all of their cars having to fight not to be bumped out of the race, and then Rahal, of course, getting bumped. I mean, it's the polar opposite to come back and the road course first attempt after being bumped from the 500 to take pole. I mean, it's just a remarkable story. I mean, for the entire team, it's a story of resilience. It's one of those incredible comeback stories. And, just to think of the contrast of Rahal breaking down in tears in the interview after being bumped, sitting on the side of his car, being consoled by his family. And then after qualifying, taking pole, it was jubilation with his family. I think it looked really good throughout the weekend. I think he obviously headed practice. He looked like the strongest car there. There was a bit of a scare actually in the first qualifying session. I think he spoke about his brake pedal going a bit soft, but really from there, him and Lundgaard were just the class of the field. And in every qualifying session, I think it was maybe Lundgaard from Rahal in first qualifying session, then into Q2 it was Rahal from Lundgaard, and then obviously locks out the front row. And I think Rahal was probably the deserving winner. I'm not going to say Dixon got lucky, but Rahal set the fastest lap. He was really the fastest car, and yeah, it just didn't work out for from a strategy standpoint. But at the end of the day, I don't think they could have done that much different strategy-wise. They weren't going to come in under the early caution, and Rahal he drove the wheels off the car. I mean, yeah, you could claim he maybe got unfortunate with back markers. He wasn't happy with Ryan Hunter-Reay, gesticulated towards him, but at the same time, Dixon had the same issues trying to pass back markers. So I don't feel like Rahal could have done anything more, and it was an honourable weekend, and it's a really, really remarkable story. I think arguably the story of the season.
Rahal drove as well as he could have, and he got close to Dixon. I think the last 10 laps we thought he probably will get Dixon here. Obviously didn't in the end, which is quite unfortunate for him because he drove the best he could have. He made no mistakes out there. Obviously said he got a bit unlucky with Hunter-Reay. Whether that would have really made a difference, we don't know. But what a weekend, what a turnaround for this team. And yet again, their road course performance really, really shines. And wasn't only Rahal this weekend, Lundgaard did a great weekend. Even Harvey, probably one of his best weekends of the year so far. But obviously Rahal's going to be the one who still has the headlines, rightly so. It's his first podium since Texas 2021, so it's still 2.5 years since his last podium, which is equally as impressive.
Yeah, and his first pole as well since Detroit in 2017.
Yeah, and that was his last win. You kind of feel a bit unfortunate for Rahal that didn't come today, but the turnaround of form from them as a team, you feel maybe a win isn't impossible looking. Maybe even Portland or Laguna Seca looking early into next year. The form has taken a significant step even from the start of the year, and this is a track the team are very quickly identifying as very strong at. And I really hope we do see Rahal back on the top step soon, because it's a bit of a shame we couldn't get there today. Not much more he could have done, but fantastic effort nonetheless.
Afterwards, he was still kind of disappointed in the fact that he got second. You could see in like the post-race interviews, he was looking down a bit. I feel like in his head he was probably critiquing everything that went wrong and what he could have done, and it just speaks to kind of like what's going on in all the drivers' minds. Even if when they do the best they can, and even when they come and do like a really impressive race, they're always thinking of like what they could have done, and it's just kind of, I think he should go home and kind of just take it for what it is. Like I said, it's very impressive that he's done that, and especially to come back and have that kind of comeback from May earlier. it is really, really good, and I think he should just take it for what it is and try and be like, see all the good parts in it and try not to look at kind of the bad part, which is that he didn't win. But either way, he put up a really good race and a good fight and a good battle to Dixon for the entire kind of race, start to front.
Yeah, I mean, it outlines the strides they've made as a team, that less than 3 months on from that disappointment, you know, in the month of May, being bumped, that he's now disappointed about finishing second on the road course. I mean, yeah, that is remarkable, really. I think, obviously, it further emphasises that, you know, Rahal's not done with IndyCar. He's, you know, people have been saying, you know, maybe he's not got the aspirations to stay full-time. He's not got it anymore. But he's proven that wrong this weekend. It was an excellent performance, and I think looking more widely, it maybe makes the RLL team more of an attractive prospect as well. It doesn't look like Jack Harvey is going to continue. I mean, it was a better weekend, but I mean, to finish, I think, did he finish 14th? He qualified 8th, you know, solid qualifying. To qualify 8th, get through to the Fast 12, almost, you know, knocking on the door of the Fast 6. He did get an engine penalty, so started a bit further back. But he's just not quite on the pace of his teammates. But I think to any drivers who are free in the driver market, I suddenly think RLL look like a team. Yes, maybe their overall performance isn't there, but drivers are going to be looking at them now and thinking, all right, maybe this is not so bad not so bad a place to, you know, set my eyes on for the future. And I think that's a real boost for the team.
And I'd actually argue on RLL's behalf, they might have even been the second best team on Road and Street this year. Which Chip Ganassi are probably slightly above them levels wise, but you look at Team Penske, they've been pretty poor road courses this year. And the other person you'd throw up there is McLaren, who've been okay, but I'd say Rahal's been slightly better. And when you look at that, the second best team on Road and Street, quite possibly, is a really appealing option. And we'll touch on this later, but overnight the entire driver market context has completely changed, so we don't know who will end up getting that seat. I mean, we're looking at Felix Rosenqvist, but that dynamic might have changed now. But as I said, it was such an appealing option. There's so many races this year. You know, today, Toronto, Mid-Ohio, Road America, the first Indy GPs, loads of races they looked really strong at on road courses, and they actually have a very strong package looking at that.
You know, we speak about Lundgaard's championship position quite a bit, and you know, he's back up above Kirkwood, 8th in the championship. He was disappointed. He was quite annoyed, actually. I think he felt they'd made a bit of an error bringing him in for, I don't know which stop it was. I assume it was his final stop. You know, he was a bit frustrated with the decision, but you know, to still finish 4th on a day where you're frustrated. He had a bit of a longer stop as well when it looked like he could contend with Rahal for the win. Took his, you know, a bit long on the fuel, but yeah, for Lundgaard, finish 4th again. It's another exceptional road course performance, and I think looking towards Portland Laguna, they'll really set their eyes on getting a win before the end of the season. And
Lundgaard was strong at both of his events last year too, so who's to say maybe they can't sneak a win there. There's not really any teams, maybe apart from Ganassi, who have proved to be strong there, so great opportunity there as well. I think the other big story of the weekend, well, the race, not the weekend, is probably looking at the championship. We talked about the melee of Dixon on lap 1. He hit Palou, who spun round Armstrong. Cars are trying to avoid the main victim being Josef Newgarden, who coming into this race was the main contender. Alex Palou, not his best day, but again, very Alex Palou day. Finished P7, solid result. Newgarden's dying championship hopes, I think, are now dead in the water.
Yeah, I mean, from practice, it was just another really subpar Penske performance. I think, especially on Newgarden's side, he rolled out in practice. He was 24th, and that's the sole practice session they had. Obviously, with it being quite a packed schedule with the NASCAR doubleheader, and then he was out in Q1 in 10th. That's putting him down, you know, even at the back of the mid-pack in terms of a starting spot, and he was annoyed. He punched the timing stand. He didn't look happy at all, and that was a big blow to his championship. They decided just to take that as a chance to do an engine change. He started 25th in the end, and ultimately it was that poor qualifying, the taking of the engine penalty that led to him getting caught up in the incident indirectly. He kind of just unsighted with Armstrong's car across the track, and it was a bizarre incident. It was slightly reminiscent of the Pato O'Ward thing at the 500, just from a completely different angle. But he kind of just vaulted the car slightly and ended up, over the front wing, and Newgarden was desperately trying to get them to fire him up, but he went a lap down, and from there it was a tough day. He ended up 2 laps down in the end, I think, and that's it for the championship now. It was probably it for the championship anyway, even with Gateway coming up, which he's going to be the overwhelming favourite to win. It was a bad weekend. I mean, it remains to be seen what he could have done from further back in the pack if he didn't take the engine, if he just didn't get caught up in the incident. But they never looked even sort of like a top half car, which was quite damning, really.
Yeah, we spoke extensively about the inconsistency of Penske this year. There's something which has plagued Newgarden the last couple of years, and again, they're lacking it on road courses. Newgarden's best finish on a road course is second in Road America, but the next best was back in the GP in May, where he finished 7th. And the results aren't coming in this year, and it's something they will need to be looking at towards next year, because it is really hampering Newgarden. As much as they are good in ovals, if you're not translating that into road courses, it's not going to wield you a championship.
Yeah, I mean, his teammates kind of salvage results. Will Power finished 6th, Scott McLaughlin 8th, but it kind of says it all that Penske are into salvage results, that they're not in the position to, capitalise and look and get into those positions that even you look at Dixon didn't have the finest qualifying, but he still managed to cycle to the front, and I didn't really see Power at all in the race, didn't really see McLaughlin that much. I think you look at qualifying actually, and that's something I'll bring up again, is McLaughlin seems to have the edge on his teammates. He's the one who's been having the standout qualifyings. Obviously, Iowa was a bit of an exception with Power taking the double pole. Even then, McLaughlin was on the front row for both races. They were all in the same qualifying group. I think McLaughlin managed to progress, but the other two were not really that close to progressing. It was, again, just a real lack of speed for Penske, and as you said, they really need to sort this out heading to next year. And this is the thing now, the last few races this year, a couple of road courses left. Try and focus our attention on development and getting into the best position they can be for next year, because they've not quite had that edge this year, considering how strong they've looked on the ovals.
Yeah. I mean, Newgarden hasn't even got a pole this year, which speaks absolute volumes to Penske's qualifying form, and he's probably the first guy I'd expect to get a pole position out of anyone in the field. So that really does speak about the issues that Penske have been having in qualifying this year. And, Gateway's a good chance for him to rectify that, but it's been a frustrating season, particularly away from the oval aspect of it. I think next to touch on is the McLaren. So ran pretty decently here in May. They finished 2nd, 3rd and 5th. Simply again today, 3rd and 5th. Obviously Rosenqvist retired with some kind of engine issue or gearbox issue, but it was a pretty strong qualifying. O'Ward and Rossi lined up 3rd and 4th. Rosenqvist lined up 10th, and even in the race they were all running towards the front of the pack early on. It was all right. I think it's been a very McLaren day this season. It's been a respectable day. Nothing too much to shout home about, but it's a decent result for them.
Yeah, I kind of feel like their strongest performances this year arguably have come in both the races on the Indianapolis road course. They got a double podium in the Indy GP earlier in the year, but I think it says a lot about their season, really, that this has been their strongest track, and they're still, pushing for top 5s and not really looking too close to winning races. I think there was maybe a stage today where you thought O'Ward could be in contention, but they never really had the pace for that to materialise. I think, qualifying was great, but they were still second best to the RLL guys on the front row. I think it was looking like one of Rossi's strongest weekends, but, fifth, it's not bad. I think he's had a slight upturn in recent races after a bit of a tough patch, but, I think there was a stage early on where he looked like he could bring the challenge to Rahal. I think they were possibly on different tyres, though, and as soon as I think they both ended up on the primaries might have been the second stint, and all of a sudden Rahal
started on blacks. So.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And then Rossi and Rahal, I think in the second stint, both ended up on the primaries, and that's when Rahal really started to extend the gap when you thought Rossi could be a bit of a contender. Yeah, it was a decent weekend for McLaren, but decent is as good as it seems to have got, really.
Yeah. I think Pato O'Ward will take quite a lot as an individual, because they were talking about this on Friday. He doesn't really like the Indy road course at all. It's one of his least favourite tracks, which least suits his driving style. And they walk away with a P2 and a P3 this year, which is a very solid result. It's his first podiums at the track, I believe. He's taken 6 podiums this year, which is actually a career best for him. 3 seconds, 3 thirds. And again, for someone who doesn't typically run well, it's been a pretty decent run for O'Ward. And it's not a track McLaren have gone stronger, not a track he's gone stronger, but it was quite a composed drive today. I think P3 was the best he could have realistically done. He got Lundgaard, which was pretty impressive considering how pacey he was. So it was a decent day for McLaren, but I feel that's what we're saying a lot of this year. It's a decent day for almost every race.
It always seems that, except from a couple of times, it just seems that they're running at like the top of the pack, but they're never really there for the win. I feel like they've had a couple of second places, but I feel like they're always trying to go for like P3 rather than like the win. And it's just McLaren, I feel like everyone kind of expects them to do a bit better this season, and I think like at the start, I think they were kind of living up to that, and then they kind of just went off a bit. And I think kind of going from trying to fight for the wins to, like you said, getting in like the top 5 and top 10, it's just really kind of gone downhill from that. But I feel like they've done all right to get back to the point where they are getting on the podium, and they kind of telling everyone that they're still there, if that makes sense. And I think if they can go in, just do more like development, and maybe next season they can pull it all back, and they can have a good start of the season, and they can continue that for the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, I feel like O'Ward probably deserves a bit of credit, actually. I think I would describe today's race as clean from him, and I think ever since Detroit, I think he has actually realised, all right, I was probably being a bit desperate and maybe impatient at times, and he's really taken it on the chin and acknowledged that maybe he needed to change his mindset a little bit. Since then, he's finished inside the top 8 every race. Incidentally, he's only finished 8th and 3rd since then. He's got 3 8th places.
10th and Iowa race 2.
Oh yeah, that's the graph's gone all weird on here. Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's for some reason it's put the Iowa second race in a different category. Yeah, he's got 3 third places in 7 races, 7 top 10s. That's solid. I think that's, you look at 24th because of his incident in the 500, 26th in Detroit. I think it's been a big improvement since then, and he's definitely been more measured. And it's a shame that we had those few races where he did seem to lose his head slightly. I think obviously the 500 you can maybe put differently, but Long Beach, Detroit, I think without them, you can't really look at him as, we'll be contending with Palou, but I think he's definitely improved, and I think it's positive going into next season. He's got some good momentum.
And I think a lot of the stuff O'Ward used to struggle at, he has really turned around. The last couple of years, he's really struggled with tyre management. That's something he's actually clearly taken a step forward with, and even consistency now. And I think now he's kind of shrugged off that rough patch. It's going to be, can he get a win between now and then, and resetting for next year? And the start of the season was very encouraging, and I think he's trying to get the bits together. And last couple of races, as you say, since kind of that weird run of form he had, it's been kind of maximising the results the best he can, which is all you can ask for. And decent showing again today. He'll try go for a winning gateway. It's probably his best chance, but Penske will be the favourites. But we'll see what he can do between now and the end of the season. I think we should give a little shout out to Devlin DeFrancesco. Finished in P19 today, but I think he gave us one of the moments of the season, I'd say, jumping from 5th to 1st on the opening lap in one corner. Probably the most incredible IndyCar moments we've seen in a long time.
I mean, it didn't seem outrageous to think it could be challenging for pole at one point. I mean, his previous best start was 9th, and that came on an oval. His previous best on road and street was 12th in Road America and Toronto. To then make it into the Fast Six for the first time, and I think he was 2nd after the first runs, and then unfortunately couldn't quite get the job done. Started 5th, but it didn't really matter that he started 5th in the end. He still. It was one of those moments where it was sort of, he's got nothing to lose. He's not fighting for a championship. He knows he's probably not going to stay there through the race. So he just thought, you know what, may as well go for it. It was really heads up driving as well, because he kind of dropped behind three of the, I think, from 2nd place to 4th, and then just sort of lifted off a tiny bit so he could then make it 4 wide and just sweep around the outside of 3 drivers and then get Rahal as well. Fair play. It was
Very
great
good move.
It was a really good move. Unfortunately, the rest of his race kind of spiraled from there.
So a lot of we saw him getting overtaken almost every 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, he suffered on the primaries, I think, after the caution. Yeah. He lost a lot of places there, and then he just didn't manage to recover, and he finished a lap down in the end, actually, in 19th. So it looked like he could, you think starting 5th, if he can hold on to a top 10, but couldn't quite happen. For a brief moment, we thought, oh my word, is this guy going to be in contention for a win after, let's face it, not having been that competitive at all during his IndyCar career? But yeah, I mean, that's a moment for him to savour, at least.
Yeah,
and for us to savour.
Yes, he'll be leaving on track at the end of the year, and he can look back probably his best moment with them. And even if the result on paper is great, there's still a lot to take on a personal level for Devlin DeFrancesco. I think he can compete at the front on this day, and he's got a bit of experience at the front, which is great for him.
Yeah, I think I missed the first 2 minutes of it, and I went on the stream and I was watching, and then he was first, and I had to blink. I was like, wait, what? And then I saw it get played again, and it was a really good move from him. And then he led more laps this race than he has in his career, but then that was because it was kind of under the caution. But still, that is really good, and that is definitely something that he should take away from it on a positive, and hopefully he does, and he has an alright day, I guess.
I think the last shout out we'll give to someone this weekend could be Linus Lundqvist. Back in again this weekend for Simon Pagenaud. We actually finally got an update on Pagenaud. He just has recovery taken a bit longer than expected. Probably say it's unlikely we see him between now and the end of the season, but we'll see what happens. But Lundqvist stepped in again, and he performed well. P12 was actually better than any finish that Pagenaud has got all year, and he narrowly missed out on qualifying for the Fast 12 yet again, but in the race he was fairly consistent, and he got a good result.
Yeah, I mean, actually the qualifying group split it turned out that both groups were incredibly competitive. I think he was in the group with all of the Ganassis, and he managed to qualify ahead of Dixon and ahead of Ericsson, which is, again, that's really creditable on his first road course outing and his second weekend in an IndyCar, of course. And he was running around the edge of the top 10 all day. It was a similarly solid race to Nashville, but it was good for him that he could get to the finish, and to end up 12th, that's phenomenal, really, considering where the team have been this season. They've generally struggled to find much pace on any type of track, but he's really exceeding expectations, and people have high expectations of him. He was a dominant Indy Lights winner in the end, but yeah, I mean, he's doing an excellent job, and I think he'll come under consideration for Meyer Shank next year. Obviously, we'll get into the announcement they made, and they've announced one of their cars for next year, but it still seems like it's quite up in the air on their second car.
Yeah.
I think it would be a real shame for Pagenaud to bow out and not manage to compete before the end of the season. Obviously, there's 2 more weeks now, but there's a lot of caution involved. I mean, we said he wasn't going to race at Iowa because it's an oval, it's physical, double header. I guess obviously it's not a double header, but similar will apply at Gateway. An oval is physical, and is that where you want him to be returning?
Be interesting to see. We do get a Gateway actually, because Daly's been going around in the 60 for Iowa, but maybe we see Lundqvist at Iowa. I mean, I don't see why. Sorry, not for Iowa, for Gateway. I don't see why he wouldn't put Lundqvist in there. He's been a successful at ovals before, and if you are looking at seriously at a race seat, I think it'd be a good bet for Gateway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's done ovals in lights, and I think he's done a test at Texas as well, if I remember correctly. So it's not like Blomqvist, who you'd be throwing in the deep end and throwing in for an oval. I don't even think he's allowed to do an oval without a test. But yeah, it would be quite interesting actually. I mean, I kind of hope Pagenaud's cleared, because it's really hard to tell what's going to happen next year. I think they have evidently been impressed by Lundqvist.
Yeah, I think it's looking unlikely with Pagenaud next year at this current rate, and you would have seen him bow out on the accident.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lundqvist will come under consideration. Obviously, he's tested for Ed Carpenter Racing. He's tested for RLL as well. RLL might look the best bet for him at this stage. Obviously, as we mentioned, they're becoming more of an attractive proposition. But he shouldn't struggle if he can. He has struggled with backing in the past and getting the funding together. But I think if my Shank take him, that's a paid seat in the 60. Yeah. So I don't think he should have an issue getting on the grid after these couple of performances.
Let's run through the running order, because there is quite a bit of news to speak about within the last week, so obviously touching on any key bits. Winner Dixon ahead of Rahal and O'Ward. 4th place went to Newgarden ahead of Rossi in 5th. 6th place was Power, who's had a fairly quiet day for him, with Palou in 7th. P8 was Scott McLaughlin ahead of Carl Kirkwood in P9, with P10 Marcus Ericsson.
Possibly one just to mention slightly, he's just dropped off. He was obviously second in the championship for a while. He took that win in the season opener. Yeah, obviously we can debate whether he should have won that race. It was probably O'Ward's to win, but Ericsson is kind of, he's remained consistent. It's kind of
Ericsson day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the low top 10 finishes that seems to be defining his season really, and he's down to 6th now. 162 points adrift of Palou, where, in the early stages you thought, is he a contender? That was quickly blown away. But yeah, it's been a consistent season, but not a remarkably consistent season.
Yeah, and I think where others have stepped up their consistency, people like Palou, Dixon, even O'Ward to some extent, we said this before, Ericsson's not necessarily the quickest on any given weekend, and he just doesn't have that form. Maybe move away from CJ will be good for him. We'll see what happens regarding his future, but we'll see what happens. It feels like a bit of a underwhelming season at times for Ericsson, and a very average result yet again today. 11th was Rinus VK's, his actual best result on a road and street this year. We didn't really see too much of VK, but decent result from his end. Looking P12, as we said, was Lundqvist. P13 went to Colton Herter ahead of Jack Harvey. That is Harvey's best result since Long Beach, so a bit of a better day, but I don't think anything can save me Jack Harvey season at the rate we're going. Castro Neves was 15th ahead of Malukas and 16th. Eilert was 17th. 18th went to Roman Grosjean, as we said. 19th was DeFrancesco in the end. 20th was Ryan Hunter-Ray. 21st was Canapino. 22nd was Stingray Rob. 23rd was Santino Ferrucci, who had a bit of a pit lane incident. It's not really too much there, a bit of an odd incident for Ferrucci. Ahead of Armstrong, who got caught up in the incident on lap 1.
Yeah, I might actually mention just about Armstrong, actually, sorry. He had quite a solid qualifying. He was the he's the highest Chip Ganassi driver in qualifying. Qualified 7th. I think he was to 8/10,000ths off getting into the Fast 6, which that was disappointing. But he looked like this was a weekend where he could really put together that headline result that. He's had a really good season, don't get me wrong, but he's maybe lacking that one headline result. And I kind of felt, I think, was it Road America or Mid-Ohio that he got unfortunate? Road America, where strategy was strange, to say the least, and he looked like he could even have been on for a podium. But yeah, this felt like another weekend where he could really have capitalised, and unfortunately he was just an innocent party and got spun round on the first lap, and that was that. Lost the lead lap, and yeah, it was unfortunate for Armstrong, but I think on the whole it's another really encouraging weekend, and yeah, we've got Gateway coming up, but I think he should finish Rookie of the Year, and deservingly so.
Yeah, definitely. He's got a 48-point gap to Canapino. Sorry, 28. No, only 28-point gap. He's got a 28-point gap to Canapino. Canapino will do an extra race. I think Armstrong will probably be comfortable in that. For a well-deserved Rookie of the Year award, I'd say. Behind Armstrong was Newgarden, obviously got caught up. Peterson was 26th. I think he also got caught up somewhere in lap 1. And the only non-finisher was Rosenqvist, who, as we said, he was having a decent day, running in around the top 10. And he has some sort of engine issue, which pays to his day. So 2 major bits of news from the weekend. We'll talk about the less significant one because we all saw this one coming, whilst the other one I don't think any of us saw coming. Tom Blomqvist will replace Helio Castroneves at Meyer Shank next year. We said this in our driver transfer episode. Seemed like it was coming, especially after Toronto. Castroneves is getting a bit older now. It was rumored to do IMSA. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but what has been confirmed is he will run the Indy 500 in a third Meyer Shank car. But Blomqvist will be taking over the number 6. We saw it coming, and I think it'd be an exciting prospect in IndyCar.
Yeah, I think first on Castroneves, he was insistent. He's not retiring. He's pretty much. He's retiring from full-time IndyCar racing, but I think you can say maybe he's just stepping back because, he's insistent he's going to keep going with sports car racing, or he even mentioned NASCAR, SRX. So it's not the last we've seen of Helio. He's joined the ownership group at Meyer Shank Racing as a minority partner. As you said, we'll run the 500, so the drive for 5 continues. Yeah, on the Blomqvist side, it'll be really interesting to see someone who has, at least his recent experiences, obviously been in IMSA and been in sports cars. He's competed in the World Endurance Championship. He was quite an esteemed single-seater driver. I think it was the FIA F3 European Championship, beat Verstappen, came second to Esteban Ocon. His most recent single-seater experience, obviously barring the race in Toronto, where he qualified fairly impressively, actually, and then unfortunately got caught up in that incident. He was in Formula E. He's done 1 full season with Neo, finished last in the championship for a team who really weren't that competitive, so there's no shame in that. But yeah, it'll be nice to see a driver who has done some of his best work in sports cars stepping over. It's nice to see drivers coming from a slightly different discipline. But yeah, Blomqvist is an exciting prospect, and I'm excited to see what he can do. And it looks like he's going to do the full schedule as well. I think there was some sort of murmurs about possibly he'd only do road and street. Someone like Takuma Sato maybe do the ovals, but no, Blomqvist has said he's trying to get an oval test as soon as possible, and he's going to be doing the entire season, which is good.
And again, it's another example of IndyCar bringing in someone from a completely different background, someone primarily based in endurance to join people, we've had from FE, from Formula 2, from Formula 1, from the Road to Indy, from Super Formula. We've got the whole lot. It's just another different skill set that I've added to the grid, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think, Meyer Shank aren't a team with much to lose, and I think Blomqvist is a good manoeuvre, and I'm really excited to see what he does next season, particularly, as a British-based podcast, he's a British driver, and let's see how he gets on.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if we are losing Jack Harvey, at least he's being replaced by another Brit. I know Blomqvist has got a few
Swedish, New Zealand.
few countries he could represent, but he is predominantly British. I think born in Cambridge. So yeah, that's a good news for us.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see what he do because he had that opportunity, but obviously he didn't kind of race. But I feel like if he continues to kind of qualify the way that he did when he raced, and if he can finish around like the same places, I feel like he'll do really well. And just gonna have to wait and see what happens, but I'm really excited for it as well.
So that was the fairly predictable bit of news. The fairly unpredictable bit of news was quite a shock to the IndyCar paddock. So Zach Brown has said that Alex Palou is going to. There's no intention of. I think the words was no intention of fulfilling his contract or something with McLaren. We've been under the assumption since October or September last year that Alex Palou will be joining McLaren in 2024. And even throughout the entire year, it looked like a given deal. The entire driver market was dependent on Palou making this expected move to McLaren. But overnight, it's taken a massive U-turn out of absolutely nowhere, to be completely honest, and come as a huge shock. It changes the driving market completely, and for the second year in a row, it looks like we're going to get into a legal battle involving Alex Palou and who he races for next year.
I mean, I think it's news that's got everyone's head spinning a bit. I think, obviously, it draws up a lot of questions. I think, firstly, focusing on the driver market, what happens at McLaren? Is this a saving grace for Felix Rosenqvist? Does this mean he gets a seat at a top team still by staying at McLaren, who, through all this have seemed keen on keeping him? Obviously, they explored the option of bringing a fourth car. And then what about Palou? Is he welcome at Chip Ganassi? I think the indications are that he possibly still is. At the end of the day, they want winners, and Palou is a winner. But it's hard to tell what this is doing to his reputation. I think on the broadcast today, they were very hung up on, he's a winner and he's going to do what's best for his career. And you can kind of agree with that. However, I think maybe there's some mistrust building if he's not honouring contracts. I think there's also mismanagement in here. I think his management have actually parted ways with him after apparently he stopped answering their calls, and it's a bizarre situation. I think you can't put it all on Palou because at the end of the day, he's not the one. The drivers aren't supposed to manage their careers. You have management for that reason. It's a tricky predicament. It's hard to unpick. I mean, just the mere suggestion of having a McLaren contract for 2024. He's not supposed to be discussing the teams until the 1st of September anyway. So, we've seen some suggestions that maybe he didn't honour it because he thought it was invalid, but I personally don't see that because he would have known about the deadline anyway, and or the date that he couldn't discuss with other teams about his future. Yeah, it's tough, and I mean, you look at suggestions from Zach Brown that they've already paid him a lot. They've invested time and money in aiding his development, trying to build that path into F1 with tests, with practice sessions. Yeah, I mean, it's just a mess, basically.
Yeah, it's another turn to this seemingly never-ending saga, and when we thought it's going to resolve itself fairly neutrally, in the end, it's come back right in the opposite direction. And second year in a row, Palou's gone to a contractual dispute, and maybe he will damage his reputation. But from one end, I see Palou's. Why would you want to leave Ganassi? And with McLaren's F1 future being so stable at the minute, what opportunity is there? But at the same time, you're still missing out on any potential F1 opportunity, because what team is going to take you if you're going to be supposedly dishonouring contracts? It's a difficult situation for Palou. Personally, you can see why he did it, but maybe looking longer term, how is this going to affect him? Where he's going to be racing next year, we don't know. I think it's going to be fairly predictable. McLaren will take it to the courts. Whether they stick with him next year in IndyCar is a complete unknown question. There were rumours of him getting an F1 practice session at the end of the year. I think we know that's almost certainly gone. Where do you go from here? News broke last year around Toronto time, so there's still half the season to go. But there's 3 races. What happens now? The driver market's turned on his head. It all still depends on where Palou goes, but when are we going to find that information out? such an interesting and unexpected bit of news. It's completely revolved the entire series.
Still obviously under contract with Chip Ganassi, and I know that they made a statement kind of regarding the statements by the management of McLaren. I won't read it all out, but it was just saying that McLaren are basically playing the victim, and because they kind of started this progress and all that, and kind of how the Ganassi team kind of grew up respecting the McLaren team and the success, and the new management doesn't have that kind of same respect, they said. So it's definitely going to start things between the two teams, and it's just one of them things. It's also, I know that it was for the F1 development, but also why would you pay a driver advancement on the salary when they haven't been signed yet? I don't know, but that kind of, it's a bit weird there with me. I feel like you would wait until they're definitely signed, because otherwise you're kind of putting money into something and it's only based on their words. You kind of have no, it's not written down, it's not in the contract, it's they could go back on it any time. So I feel like, I don't know, every driver I feel like kind of expected Palou to also go to McLaren. You see in some of the videos where they're like, where's the McLaren contract? But it flipped everything upside down, and it's just going to cause a whole kind of ordeal, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bizarre situation. There's not a lot of clarity. Was this a contract where he's literally signed on the dotted line? Is this a verbal agreement? You doubt it being a verbal agreement if payments have been made. But as I said, then why is there a contract if he's not supposed to be discussing? Was that date dropped? It's it's hard to tell really. It all obviously links back to last year. It's a legacy of last year. You've got the question, was Palou maybe thinking too much about F1 and too fixated on the route to F1? Because that feels like the reason why McLaren was so attractive to him, and ultimately why he has ended up signing that test and reserve driver contract with McLaren. I think it could indicate that the F1 path is now closed, that he is, parting ways with McLaren, or intending to do so. I've seen some interesting theories. People are suggesting that maybe he'll stay with Ganassi, who have the Honda links, and when Honda end up supplying Aston Martin, could that provide a route for him when Fernando Alonso eventually calls it a day? That's something interesting, but it's really hard to read into it. Has he simply thought, it's going to be difficult to get into F1, let's just have some certainty in a championship for a team where I know I can be competing at the front and winning championships? It's, you can't blame him for wanting to stay at Ganassi. It's such an incredible operation. Things are going so well there. But yeah, he's burning bridges, which isn't a good thing. And it's just weirdly, it's a weird contrast to his character. When you see him, he's smiling, he's laid back, he's relatively understated, really. But in this, he's ruthless in this sort of off-track contract situation. When it comes to his career, he's going to do what's best for his career, and staying at Ganassi is the best route. But it's just the way it's all happened with all the contract disputes. It's messy, to say the least.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information we need to know, which big IndyCar journalists don't know. I think the main question is, what was the extent of his McLaren contract? Because I don't think Zach Brown's an idiot. I don't think he would sign a normal contract with someone. But then again, what happens to this period of exclusivity that he supposedly had? I think that's where the main question lies around. That once this information comes out, where do we go from here? Because this won't be resolved for months at least, and the entire driving market has been waiting for this domino to fall. And someone like Felix Rosenqvist, do you jump ship now to someone like RLL just in case Palou does come over, or do you stay at McLaren and risk losing your seat if Palou comes over at this point? It's such a complex situation which affects the entire paddock, you know, I think it's something like 33% of drivers are actually already signed on for next year. What do you do with the rest of the field? It's such another major twist to this driver market, and it's just so unpredictable. What happens now? You know, I think next 2 or 3 days we're going to find a lot more information, but it's such an unknown now, particularly when it comes down to the driving market.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't see him ending up at McLaren now.
No.
I mean, I think Zach Brown said in his statement that he still expects Palou to honour the contract, but how can you? And do you really want someone who, you know, is... It's hard to know how to put it, really, who has essentially said they would rather be someone else. Do you want them driving for you? It's a tough decision. He's the best driver in the series right now, but
even if someone like Zach Brown doesn't want him, if it goes to the courts and he's denied from racing for Ganassi, he's still taken out probably one of his main championship contenders. And looks like the F1 door is closed, at least for now, with Palou. I think any McLaren links to F1 are now closed, which is, again, really significant. He was going to go round with the team after the Saga. He was going to get a practice session. You know, where does that leave someone like Pato O'Ward? Does he get a better chance in F1 future? It's such a complicated mess, and I don't know where Palou will end up next year. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to tell at this moment in time. It's just such an unknown, I think, is the main thing that's coming out of it.
Yeah, I get the impression from the reports I've read that Ganassi will happily have him. I mean,
why wouldn't they?
Exactly, it benefits them. They don't have to be competing against this guy that they know is just so good. But it's whether he is even allowed to race for Ganassi. If it is found this contract with McLaren, he does have to fulfill it. Then, yeah, it's a very, very messy situation. Once again, 1 year since being embroiled in another legal case, we look to be entering another, most probably.
And last year's, as crazy it was at the time, now seems fairly timid compared to this one.
I think it just depends on the extent of the contract, because obviously no one knows, but the way I interpret it is that Palou's like signed something, you know, it's been written out, it's kind of done like that. But then you can't sign anything, like you said, until the 1st of September, so then I don't think he'd put himself in that position. But then who knows, maybe he did, and I don't know, like you said, there's so much uncertainty that I think all we can do is wait until we get more information, and then from that, then we can just piece stuff together. But for now, it's just a mess. I think he's going to try and obviously stay at Chip Ganassi. I feel like they would want him because he's doing really well at the moment, but also would they want him more on like a personal level? Because why would you want someone who has kind of been signing them contracts or has been kind of getting in the place that has led to this, if that makes sense? There's just so much that we don't know, and I think that we won't know until it has to be said, or until it comes out in the courts, if that's what it leads to.
The big question now is what happens in the driver market. Imagine a week ago saying that Chip Ganassi Racing would keep the same lineup next year with Marcus Ericsson and Alex Palou, and now that's genuinely looking like quite a possibility. But I think what do you think will happen in regards to the driver market? Will we suddenly see an influx of transfers within the next month of people wanting to secure their futures, or is it just going to be a waiting game for Palou, for Ericsson still?
I mean, it could go one of two ways, really. I mean, I think all of a sudden Rosenqvist is kind of quite a big domino because, you know, does he just search for certainty, which, you know, you couldn't blame him for wanting to, you know, just make sure he has a seat rather than a 80% chance he manages to stay at McLaren. You know, there's still the chance he doesn't manage. You look at how it impacts people such as Callum Ilott, who seem like one of the favourites, if not the favourite, at Ganassi. I mean, a couple of weeks ago we were saying 2 seats would be free at Ganassi, and now we're looking at possibly even the same driver lineup if they do manage to keep hold of Ericsson, if he gets paid. It's really hard to read. It could just stay completely stationary until something happens with Palou. Obviously, you've got a few teams where stuff could happen. You look at Meyer Shank, possibly Ed Carpenter Racing, but all of a sudden there might not be quite as many seats free as people expected, and that could impact the likes of Ilott, David Malukas, for instance.
Yeah, and the Andretti seat is a waiting game because there's been rumours they signed both Ericsson and Malukas, and obviously that's still a big question mark over Grosjean. But you still wait for that domino to fall, because as soon as Ganassi make that move or lose play, it changes everything. And it's going to be an interesting one. Do you just commit now because of the uncertainty, or is it a case of you just have to wait it out? It's such a complicated dynamic to what already was a complex driver market. Because teams like RLL, teams like Andretti, and then smaller teams like Juncos, for example, are waiting on Ilott. It's just such a complicated case, and where Palou will be next year, even being IndyCar at this rate, who knows? It's such a complicated saga, both on Palou's level, but the entire series looking into next year, and it's going to be a fascinating couple of months.
I mean, yeah, we're certainly going to be kept on our toes once the season concludes, which might be quite nice, actually. More content for us as it winds down. Only 3 races left, which is quite crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, at least it extends the IndyCar season plus the IndyCar silly season. Maybe it just extends the season slightly for us.
There we are. Dramatic twists to the driver market after what was a very good race on the Indianapolis road course, almost overshadowed by the events of the weekend. But great race, really fascinating driver market for now. We'll wait to see what happens. As we said, hopefully that means loads more content in the off season. That's all we've got time for this week. Next week's going to be another off week, so we'll have another episode planned, don't you worry. And then we're going to have a triple header to end the season, starting off with last over race at Gateway before Portland and Laguna Seca to round out the season. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.